Okay, session number 2.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
starts by she saying, and that always sounds very, very kind of when this voice says recording in progress.
All right. You expect to see the director, hit the clapper. All quiet on the set. So I last after we recorded our first session, the thing I realized, and Ro will listen to it also, that you asked me a lot of open-ended questions and interviewed me, that perhaps I should interview you to sort of fully set the stage and kind of get things going, because it's been a while since we've really spent any time together. And I know you're a man who is a dynamic thinker and whose general vision remains the same, but his methods, vary all the time. So I'm really curious as to how you're seeing it. And particularly, you told me a little bit about what you were hearing from your friends and people in India about what they're experiencing with the lockdown and the kids at home. And I thought maybe we'd start there. And I'd like to, maybe the audience and me, all of us, should hear how you're hearing the problem statement from those that you're interacting with. And perhaps if people watch this, they might also feed something into this that's even different and expands on how they're seeing the problems and what the struggles are. So what are you hearing?
Well, the one point as I start saying that is that people here in India, despite my turban, they want to hear and know what people with a slightly fairer skin color are saying. So that's just,
I can always do my job. I'm the white guy.
So there's for audience in India, there will always be, this conversation will always be more valuable if the more you speak will be more valuable. So we will get there. But since you ask, I will kind of for more for your benefit, I will lay out what's been going on. As you know, Chuck, I mean, of course, the economy was in India was already kind of stuttering before lockdown and all that started. I mean, that was there on the world stage for everyone to know. And we were also trying to figure out exactly how to meander, because the last couple of, I mean, 3 big projects that we were engaged in, which you were also very much part of, one with the farmer education and the education of the rural youth for their career counseling, which we were doing in partnership with Tata Trusts. That whole speed at which and the entire mammothness with which it was moving kind of dried up, not essentially because something went wrong with us, but essentially the Tata Trust thing they as an organization were going through huge upheavals and changes. Then we were doing some work with the very, very good work with the government, which, you remember, we remember, and we still see your videos of you dancing on the streets of Kolkata, because we were working on this huge project of bringing about scale culture change about road safety. Because 150,000 people die every year on Indian roads, every year after year, just on traffic accidents. And we had taken up this project with the government of India, with the government of West Bengal, really, and the pilot was being done here in Kolkata. The project was very successful in terms of results, but then, as it happens, because it was a project which was done in partnership with the government, the elections came in, everyone got busy with the elections. The entire government machinery got completely busy with elections. And then kind of a few post-elections, the main people who were marshalling and who were really pushing this project ahead within the government, their postings changed, they were not there and all that. So it all kind of went into the back burner and not much was happening. And then the lockdown hit us. No one knew what would happen next, because you have seen what is called bandh. Bandh means a close down. Those were politically motivated close downs, which, let's say, an opposition party or someone sitting in the opposition or some political party would kind of push, but those would be for a day or two. And even it was a band, which means which was not called lockdown then. It was everything was closed for a day or two. That would put the whole city in a complete, dizzy. It would dizzy in the sense it would set it back, and everyone would talk about this. And suddenly we had the whole country locked down for so many days, and so many months. And the lockdown here was pretty stringent. The overall statistics that we have, world statistics that we have, India kind of ranked right there on the top in terms of how the lockdown was implemented, especially in the cities. Of course, as you know, in the villages of India, there is nothing to lock down. There is everything is kind of open. There are no locks to put anywhere. But the cities, which are kind of the economic run the economic machinery for the whole country, were locked down. But much more than that, for us, specifically for what we were doing, we got hit by something else that happened. The lockdown in India started on 21st March 2020, but on 21st May, a couple of months just after the lockdown started, we were hit by what was called Amphan, which was a major storm which hit around the coast of this part of the country. And because a lot of the work that we had done, and we had invested a lot of money on the green village, as you know, and we were also working on the overall ecological side of things, just like road safety was one, and overall mass education of various other aspects like farmer education, skill development. Similarly, I had taken up this whole greening, ecological thing in a slightly significant way for the last few years. That got hit extremely bad, and we lost a lot of money on that, because as you know, the green village there was nothing concrete. Everything was all kind of eco-friendly structures that we had created, and that all got completely smashed up, beat up during that storm. And just 2 hours of that storm, I was personally during the storm in the middle of the eco village trying to save things, along with driver Dilip and others and few other guys. We were trying to fend stuff from falling down and all that, much to it was a futile effort because all of it kind of crashed. So on
Whoops, you froze. Nope, you're frozen. I don't know if you can hear me. No, you're really frozen. So we had a technical issue, but so let me sort of reorient this a little bit. So you were just describing the devastation to the greens and all that was going on. And as you were describing it, I was thinking in terms of the parents listening to this, you know, who are also experiencing their own version of chaos. And I was wondering how you dealt with that and coped with that. You're really strong at coping with difficult things. And so I was wondering, you know, as you're out there with Dilip trying to sort of save this, you know, both in the moment then, but then in the aftermath when you sat down and saw that it all had been sort of, you know, lost, how you dealt with that.
So of course, you know, I would say all these years of whatever I tried to do with myself had brought me to a point where kind of didn't matter. Of course, I could see all the devastation, and I knew that it would take Herculean effort, or we would probably I'd never get it back to where it was. But truly speaking, I mean, I saw it all fallen down and all of that, and years of passion and money and all of that. But truly speaking, I mean, it didn't really, I don't think anything happened to me personally as such. I mean, others around me can probably answer that better, but I don't think I really batted an eyelid in that sense. I did a video very next day saying that this was bigger than the lockdown for us. And I actually did a video, I think, in all 3 languages that I speak. I hadn't done many YouTube videos before that, but that was kind of the first or second YouTube video that I did. And I actually went around Kolkata. It wasn't just us. All of Kolkata was, you know, was an amazing sight, primarily because of the number of trees that were uprooted. Not too many people who live in buildings got much affected. I mean, because the uprooted trees got cleaned up. But people who live in shanties and who do not have proper, you know, concrete buildings, their roofs had all gone. And people living close to the coastal areas had suffered a lot of damage. But I fundamentally felt that we had to start everything afresh, and I would have to think something out which would be completely new to really get us out of this. And it was not just me out of this, not just us, but I knew what was going on with the lockdown. You know, it has been 2 months that everything had been locked down and nothing had. It seemed very clear that whatever was happening whatever had worked before this would not work, even if for some people it felt it would work. Some people, a few people who continued to do economically, you know, okay, whether if they were selling masks or if they were selling sanitizers or if they were into the IT industry where, you know, technology, or if they were in the pharma industry, the few industries which were still, you know, doing well, or if they were selling insurance, for example. I mean, some were saying things, but otherwise, I mean, industry after industry was devastated. So I felt that things would have to be done differently. I really looked at it and said that this was opportunity, because as you know, Chuck, we have always tried to focus on serving people. And if you remember, one of the first realizations that you and I...
Oh, Rat, you froze.
And you know, all those many trips.
Wait, stop. You froze just as you got one of the first realizations you and I had, and then you froze. So go back and redo that.
Okay. So one of the first realizations you and I had after we had engaged in quite a few of those trips, you know, the trips that we made to far off areas. I remember one out in the mountains somewhere. We were driving to, it was Wisdom Media, I think. We were trying to meet this media company, and you have those stories about how you were tired driving, and I started driving for a little while in the mountains.
Yeah.
And after a little while, you really had to snatch the wheel off me because the way I was going.
But we saw the Milky Way and we changed seats, and it was awesome.
So I know, I mean, that discussion is for another day. That's a whole different story. But after all those trips, you and I had come to the point where we realized that even if we wanted to serve people and tell people what was, whatever we had learned was the right thing to do or the good thing to do, no one was bothered about that. So we had to search for people who were pushed to the wall. And one of the first projects that you and I did together, hence after that, was something where we did a program for those who were diagnosed with breast cancer. And the main reason behind that was we said that, whatever we have to say, no one is interested in listening to all that until and unless they're pushed to the wall. So we said, okay, let's look at people who are facing death. And we did that program on breast cancer patients. And I mean, that was so many years back, but I would say I saw that same thing. I saw a whole nation, and not just a nation. I mean, it was global phenomena, as we all know. The whole lockdown and what happened with this pandemic, that everyone was pushed to the wall. So I felt that this was the time when we really had to rediscover ourselves and do something specifically for this. So I actually spent every day not paying heed to the lockdown, not paying heed to what was happening with the pandemic or whether I would get infected or not. So I went down to every village in the, whether it was where no one was going. For example, in India, there was a lot of, there was a notion that the Muslims were kind of not they were leaving everything on Allah and not paying heed to the fact that there was a pandemic. Initially, there was this notion, and people were kind of blaming that they are not listening to whatever was being, was being mandated, etc. So I actually went to the Muslim villages and spent time there. I would go to the wholesale markets and be there all night to really see how the vegetables were reaching us in the morning. And I found that it was as crowded as India could be. The wholesale vegetable markets which operate through the night. And in the morning, when you came to the city, it was all locked down. But where all these vegetables came from were all completely crowded, as crowded as could be. So I saw this whole thing that was going on. I understood that you could not depend on the media. The media was feeding us something, whatever they could look at. It was, I mean, whether you have been off media, I mean, for a long time. You've always said that it's been a long time that you couldn't believe media. So I wanted to really get a first-hand feel of what was going on. It was, of course, very different from what media was feeding us. And I felt that there was an opportunity. So I focused on really the solution to all this. And from that, what has emerged is what keeps me busy, extremely busy and extremely optimistic right now. And as I mentioned the last time, we are working on this project called the Plant Library. So it is the plant bit brings in all the goodness aspect, and the library bit brings in all our expertise in technology and media related to education. So that's how I'm kind of stitching it all together now. So a plant library is a small botanical garden, a mini botanical garden, which we can set up in any locality, in any household, in any apartment complex, in any village block, in any small town, small place. Anyone can set up very easily. So that's what we are creating models for setting up small botanical gardens in your own house.
I want to interrupt you for a second, because I keep thinking about the parents listening to this, and trying to sort of figure out how to leverage what you're talking about with what they're going through. And I heard I heard one thing that you said in particular that struck me. When you said the day after you looked at what happened to the greens, and you said, but it didn't affect me. It didn't impact me. And what you described was what I would call resilience. That here was a very hard blow after many years of real passionate work that you did against, people like me saying, what are you doing? And a lot of money, a lot of effort. And here it got knocked down. And yet what you experienced, and this is a really important thing to try to tease out and explain. You said it didn't affect me. I looked around and I saw everybody was affected. And you began to be creative in your response to it. Describe why that you believe that you're capable of doing that, because that is for parents who are sort of knocked back by the whole process. That whole thing of kind of having perspective and resilience is a key piece of what I think we're going to talk about.
So I would just attribute it to the years of sadhana. That sadhana, as just deep committed practice that I indulge in, which is a practice just around this, on sticking on to whatever comes and not being affected. So I don't know if I can have a 1 minute or 2 minute or a one sentence answer to this, where this comes from, because I used to be a person, an individual who would just lose temper very easily. And I talk about this. Reena and I, when we got married, we were going to our honeymoon. And this was 27 years back, 1994. And we were in a bus station in Chandigarh. Chandigarh is in Punjab, in the capital, is a city in Punjab. And this is as far away from my hometown as it could be, and I don't know anyone there. And then these are, Punjabis, people who live there are all well built, and they are known for their strength and for their manliness and all that. And this is just Reena and I out of our own comfort zone. This is not my city anywhere. And there was some problem, something related, something with the bus driver. Then I was ready to kind of fight and beat him up and all that. So that was me at one point of time in my life. And this is I'm going on my honeymoon. This is I should be very happy, peaceful, and all that. So it's not that I was always this just nice, peace loving, equanimous kind of guy all the time, but I kind of felt that was not the right way to live this life. And I have worked very hard every day, day after day, and I keep doing that the practice. And so the only single word that I would use to answer your question is practice, which means a daily practice. Every day you have to practice building resilience in yourself. Every day you have to practice. Have a specifically designed practice that helps you deal with whatever comes in life. Only then when it comes, then it happens automatically, just like anything else. It would be like music. If you're learning music, if you have to practice music, then when you're on stage, it happens automatically. So I would say that day that we were talking about, the day the storm hit and everything, that was the stage. And the only reason it didn't affect me, because I have every day in and day out, I give time to practicing aloofness, equanimity, not getting affected. Only thing I would say is that is not equanimity without passion, because these are two kind of opposite things. If you're passionate, you would say, okay, then you are very engaged, you're involved, and you're attached. So the practice of these constant, it's not just passionate equanimity. That's what Ken would say. I remember a chapter in Grace and Grit called Passionate Equanimity. So that's the kind of thing. All these opposites that you have to marshal in your life have to be practiced. And that's the only thing I would say, that it doesn't come easily. And I would want parents to keep that in mind.
The thing I was thinking about today is here in America, we have a very, large sort of quote unquote spiritual community. A lot of very bright people, especially the younger kids, very interested, reading a lot of stuff, and really embracing a very sophisticated ideas about how life works and the deep spiritual stuff. And yet there's an enormous gulf between a good idea and the realization that is implied by it. And the gulf is bridged by long-standing practice. Practice is not easy. Real change is not easy. It takes courage, it takes faith, it takes honesty, it takes time, at least in my experience. And that I completely agree and relate to you that the core of what is underneath everything that we're going to talk about really is learning to embrace and execute a practice so that you become transformed in the process. Equanimity in the face of that kind of calamity and resilience in that, where you begin to look out to other people, that is no trivial feat. That is not. That is really based on a deep sense of what self is and what matters. Oops, I've dropped my earpiece. That you just can't learn that in a book. You cannot. You learn that through putting yourself in the face of that which changes you, and over time, daily practice. Morning and evening I have a practice, and it's now many years, and it's just extraordinary what it does. That what it's done to me over time, not instantly. And I work with people now who are trying to grow, and they're on the outside looking in, and they're so frustrated because they know there's something, but they can't taste it yet. And there's nothing I can do to say, oh, read page 74, it'll tell you the answer. There's nothing like that. All I can do is help them gain a sense of faith, challenge them to have optimism, challenge them to trust, and to set sail. Now, in spite of all of the cynicism that we've learned to believe in, all of the belief in our small in mind, small W will to meet social expectations. None of that works. It is the changing of ourselves that works.
Which is why I was very optimistic when some of the people who kind of triggered this conversation, some of the people, parents here who were facing real problems because of the lockdown and all that. When, as I said, when they looked at, I think some picture where your and my video was there on that tie and the turban piece, and the reason they got interested is again probably because, of course, the notion that here's the
great white man.
The skin color. Here we have
I'm gonna wear a crown. I'm gonna wear a crown.
I know you would always talk about a T-shirt saying that I am what was that? I'm white, but there was some slogan you had.
I forget now. Yeah.
You had coined for dealing with this
I remember that. Maybe it'll come to me. I smell it anyway.
Yeah, when you were in India, you would see this a lot. I mean, people would pay you special respect just because of your skin color, and then,
or the opposite, getting pissed off at me because I was white and what was I doing, messing in business around there. There was some of that too. Anyway, that's beside the point.
But what I was saying is that I was really optimistic about this conversation because although that was the bait, people would want this white child psychologist, hoping that, but you are much more than that. And I knew that. I mean, not everyone knows that. So that, I started mentioning that, and then everyone got even more excited.
Cool.
I mentioned that he's not just a white guy. Here's a person who in his 20s had kind of roamed around with an Indian sadhu all his, for years and grew his hair and all that. And then he left that, went and did his PhD. And then he kind of did this practice, practicing with children, his the child psychologist. Then he quit that, and then he did his PhD and did the Deloitte thing, and then he kind of so. And all through that, the time that I have seen you, I mean, of course, I have heard about your prior life. I knew that your life is also built on practice. Every day, diligently, you would kind of do your own thing. It's not just reading about philosophy and tradition and all that. That's important too. I mean, the fact that we were both so interested in Ken's work is because of our interest in the cognitive side of this whole thing.
Sure.
But I would say the most important thing that parents need to remember is this, and through both of us, I mean, if both of us have to say one thing, it is the commitment to creating a practice and knowing that it will take time.
The practice with the intent to do your very best. That was the other thing. I think that at the core of what that I always was, because I had no choice but to try my very best to be genuinely, truly, deeply happy. And that because it did not, and I wasn't afraid of being distressed or being uncomfortable or unhappy. I wasn't. That was like putting coal into the train fire. That it motivated the practice to be increasingly honest, increasingly authentic, increasingly courageous, and that builds wisdom over time. We're way past 15 minutes. We're going to stop right now.
Okay.
Done. Bye.
Okay. We'll start next day with the story of the Indian Idol pitch that was happening when both of us were asked why we wanted to do that program by the team.
Okay.
I think that's where we will pick it up from next day.
Okay, cool. All right. See ya.